My name is Sheik, and I am 27 years old, born into a house where faith was not just belief, but expectation, duty, and identity. People bowed their heads slightly when my father walked past them, and because I was his son, they expected me to step into the same light, carry the same authority, speak the same sacred words with the same confidence he did. I grew up memorizing Quranic verses with the same pressure other children felt when studying for exams, only mine came with the weight of family honor. My father, Sheik was known for his discipline, his teachings, his reputation, and he shaped me with a mixture of pride and fear. I learned early that questions were dangerous, curiosity was rebellion, doubt was betrayal. I remember being 7, sitting cross-legged on the prayer mat as my father corrected my recitation, each mistake followed by the silent disappointment in his eyes. Even then, a strange ache lived inside me, like a quiet emptiness I couldn't explain. I believed obedience would cure it, so I tried harder, prayed louder, recited longer, hoping eventually I would feel what everyone claimed to feel, a closeness to Allah, a sense of divine presence, a peace. But peace never came. Instead, fear became my companion. Fear of hell, fear of shame, fear of disappointing my father, fear of the God I was told watches every thought I think. At night, while the house slept, I would stare at the ceiling and wonder why the God we served felt so distant and frightening. I wondered why I never felt loved by him, why everything holy felt more like a test than a relationship. I never told anyone about that emptiness, not my mother, who always asked me to protect the honor of the family, not my siblings, who admired my discipline, and certainly not my father, who believed leadership was inherited like blood. He used to tell me, "Karim, Allah has chosen our line. You will take my place. Prepare your heart." But my heart never felt prepared. It only felt heavier. As I grew older, the expectations tightened like a rope around my chest. I was told what opinions to have, what emotions to hide, what future to accept. Everyone praised me for being strong, but inside I felt fragile, confused, hungry for something I couldn't name. Looking back now, I think that hunger was the first whisper of God, calling me long before I knew it was his voice. Before I go on, if my story touches you, I gently ask you to like this video, subscribe, comment, and share it. You may not realize it, but your support pushes testimonies like mine into places where people are searching in silence, the same way I once did. My life stayed trapped between fear and duty for many years, until the night everything I believed shattered in a single moment, and nothing in my world was ever the same again. I still remember the night everything inside me collapsed, the night my faith, carefully constructed through years of discipline and fear, shattered like a cracked mirror I could no longer piece together. It happened after the Isha prayer, when the mosque was quieter than usual and the men had already begun drifting home. My closest friend, Amir, had come to visit me earlier that day, but he seemed troubled, hiding something behind forced smiles and shaky breaths. We grew up together, studied together, memorized the Quran side by side, and survived the strictness of our fathers as a united front, so seeing him afraid unsettled me. Later that night, as I stepped outside the mosque to lock the gate, I heard shouting from the alley behind the courtyard. When I ran toward the noise, I saw 2 men dragging Amir by his shirt, screaming accusations at him. Accusations of questioning Islam, disrespecting the Imam, behaving in ways unworthy of a Muslim. Amir begged them to stop, saying he only asked why Allah remained silent in his suffering. Instead of listening, they struck him, calling him a kafir, a disgrace. I froze, unable to breathe, as fear crawled up my spine. These were respected members of our community, men who prayed next to us every day, yet their faces twisted with cruelty I couldn't understand. When they finally left, Amir lay on the ground trembling, whispering, "Karim, I can't feel God anymore. I'm scared." I knelt beside him, but before I could speak, his father rushed in, grabbed him harshly, and warned me never to mention what I saw. That night I walked home with shaking hands, guilt pressing on my chest like a stone. How could our religion justify such violence against a hurting heart? Why did asking for comfort make someone a target? My father always taught me Islam was perfection, but perfection should not demand silence or punishment for pain. I lay in my bed unable to sleep, hearing Amir's voice over and over, "I can't feel God anymore." And deep inside, a frightening truth surfaced, neither could I. I remembered every moment I begged Allah to take away my fear, my emptiness, my confusion, yet nothing ever changed. Instead of comfort, all I felt was distance. Instead of hope, I felt pressure. And for the first time in my life, I whispered a question I never dared to think. What if the God I spent my whole life serving wasn't listening? A cold ache spread through my chest as tears slipped down my face. If Allah was real, why did I feel so abandoned? As I finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, a strange heaviness filled the room, and something began to shift in the darkness, something I couldn't explain, something that felt like the beginning of a dream I was not prepared to see. I didn't know when the dream began, only that suddenly I was standing in a quiet valley where the air felt warm and alive, like it carried a heartbeat of its own. A soft breeze brushed against my face, and before me flowed a narrow stream, its water clear enough to reflect the sky like polished glass. I looked around in confusion, wondering if this was another anxiety dream, but everything felt too real, too sharp, too vivid to be a creation of my mind. Then I sensed it, someone standing behind me. I turned slowly, and there he was, a man dressed in radiant white, brighter than sunlight yet gentle enough not to blind me. His face wasn't harsh or intimidating, it was calm, strong, peaceful, and his eyes felt like they could see every fear I ever hid and still look at me with love instead of judgment. My heart pounded as he stepped closer, and the closer he came, the more I felt something warm spreading through my chest, like light pushing away a darkness I didn't know had roots. He called my name, Kareem, with a voice that echoed like water over smooth stones. No anger, no threats, just compassion. I wanted to speak, but my lips wouldn't move. I felt like a child again, vulnerable, exposed, trembling. The man in white lifted his hand slightly and pointed toward the stream. As I looked, the water reflected words I had never seen before, glowing softly on its surface. "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." I gasped because I recognized the lines, not from the Quran, but from something forbidden, something I had never read, the Bible. My legs weakened, and I sank to my knees without meaning to. The man stepped beside me and whispered, "I have been with you, even in the silence." Those words pierced me deeper than any sermon I ever heard. I felt tears falling, not forced, not controlled, just spilling freely because for the first time in my entire life, I felt seen, not judged, not measured, not threatened, seen and loved. The man reached out his hand as if inviting me to stand, but before I could touch him, everything around me trembled. The valley, the water, the air, even my own breathing. Suddenly I was ripped backward, falling through darkness until I jolted awake in my bed, drenched in sweat, chest heaving like I had run miles. My room was still dark, but I didn't feel alone. Something lingered, an overwhelming presence of peace mixed with fear, like someone had stepped into the deepest part of my soul and lit a lamp there. I sat up shaking, whispering to myself, "Who was that?" And the moment the question left my lips, a quiet voice, gentle, undeniable, stirred inside my heart. "I am Jesus." I clamped my hands over my mouth, terrified. Jesus? The prophet? The forbidden name? I didn't tell anyone, not even Amir, but I couldn't stop thinking about the man, the words, the love. The next morning, with trembling hands and a racing heart, I opened my phone and searched secretly for a Bible app. That night after the dream, something inside me refused to settle. I tried to lie to myself, to pretend the vision of the man in white was just the result of stress or exhaustion, but his voice kept echoing inside me like it was carved into my bones. Every time I blinked, I saw that stream of living water shimmering behind him, and the sound of my name on his lips felt more real than anything I had ever heard in prayer. I spent the whole day trying to act normal around my family, nodding at my father's lectures, pretending to read the Quran as he instructed, but my hands were shaking so badly that he asked if I was ill. I told him no, but inside, I felt like something was tearing open in my chest. I couldn't stop thinking, who was that man? Why did his presence feel like love instead of fear? Why did I feel safe in a dream when I never felt safe in reality? That night, when everyone was asleep, I reached for my phone with trembling fingers and typed into the search bar, "Man in White Dream Islam." Thousands of results appeared, mostly warnings, threats, interpretations rooted in fear, but I kept scrolling until something different caught my eye. People from different countries describing the same figure, the same light, the same peace. Some of them mentioned Jesus. My heart stopped. I downloaded a Bible app, my hands sweating, constantly checking the hallway to make sure my father wasn't awake. I opened to the book of John, not even knowing why, and the first verse I read made my breath catch. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. I didn't know scripture, but those words felt like they were speaking directly to the dream I saw. I kept reading quietly, hungrily, terrified, and yet unable to stop. I didn't understand everything, but I understood the feeling. Love, something I had never experienced in all my years of striving to be the perfect son. I didn't hear footsteps, but suddenly the door flew open. My father's shadow filled the room, and I almost dropped my phone. My chest clenched so hard I thought I would faint. He stared at me for a long moment, suspicion dripping from his voice when he asked, "What are you doing awake?" I swallowed and lied, telling him I was studying. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes. He walked further into the room, glanced at the faint glow of my phone, and for a terrifying second, I thought he saw the verse still shining on the screen. My heart pounded loudly enough that I was sure he could hear it, but then he simply said, "Don't forget who you are," and walked out, leaving the door half open like a warning. My whole body trembled as I hid the phone under my pillow. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Because one truth kept burning in my mind. The more I searched for answers, the more the darkness around me pushed back. And something deep inside whispered that the real danger was only beginning. After that night, everything inside my house felt different, like the walls themselves were watching me. My father had always been strict, but now his eyes followed me with a sharpened suspicion that made my skin crawl. He began waking me earlier for prayers, questioning where I went, checking my phone whenever he thought I wasn't looking. It felt as if my dream had triggered something spiritual in the atmosphere, like light had entered a place where it wasn't welcome. I tried to stay calm, to convince myself I could keep living normally while secretly searching for truth, but the tension kept tightening until even breathing hurt. One evening, while we sat for dinner, my father announced that a respected family had suggested a marriage proposal for me. My mother smiled proudly, expecting me to feel honored, but my stomach twisted. Marriage? How could I bind myself to a life I wasn't even sure I believed in anymore? I forced myself to swallow the food, even though it felt like sand in my mouth. My father said, "This will help you focus, Kareem. A man needs responsibility. A man needs purpose." I wanted to scream that I already had a purpose awakening inside me, but not the kind he imagined. The pressure built for days until I felt like a cracked pot leaking from the inside. My father lectured me about leadership, about inheriting his religious duties, about protecting the family honor. The more he spoke, the heavier my chest felt, as if invisible chains were tightening around my ribs. Then it happened. A small argument that exploded into something I couldn't control. He told me I needed to stop wandering mentally and commit myself fully to Islam. My mother nodded silently, her eyes filled with expectation. And something inside me snapped. I asked a question I had never dared to ask out loud. Baba, why does Allah feel so far away? Why does fear control everything we do? Where is the love in all of this? The room went dead silent. My father's face froze, then slowly twisted into disbelief. My mother began to cry, whispering my name like it was a curse. I immediately regretted speaking, but it was too late. The words were out, hanging in the air like a forbidden confession. My father stood and slammed his hand against the table, shouting about rebellion, about dishonor, about how Satan misleads young men with dangerous thoughts. I tried to apologize, but he wasn't hearing me anymore. The night ended with him ordering me to stay in my room, warning me that he would not tolerate another question like that. My hands shook for hours. Shame, fear, and confusion tangled inside me until I didn't know where one ended and the other began. And then, just as I drifted into an uneasy sleep, the room filled with a soft glow. I opened my eyes and saw him again, the man in white. Only this time, he wasn't speaking in a dream. He was standing at the foot of my bed. When I saw him standing at the foot of my bed, I thought my heart would stop. The soft glow around him didn't burn, but it pressed gently against every fear in me, like light pushing back a lifetime of darkness. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, yet somehow I wasn't afraid. His eyes met mine, and it felt like every secret I'd ever buried was being drawn out of me. Every doubt, every wound, every moment I had felt unloved or unseen. He didn't have to say anything. His presence alone spoke louder than words. Then, in a voice that sounded like calm water moving over stones, he whispered, "Come to me." I jolted upright in bed, gasping. The room was dark again. No glow, no figure, just my trembling hands and the echo of his voice lingering in my chest. I pressed my palms to my face, trying not to cry. I wasn't losing my mind. I wasn't imagining this. Something was happening, something I could no longer deny. The next morning, I walked around the house in a daze. My father lectured me about discipline. My mother urged me to consider the marriage proposal. I nodded at everything, pretending to listen, pretending to exist. But inside, I felt something shifting, stretching, awakening. That night, when everyone slept, I knelt beside my bed. I didn't know how Christians prayed. I didn't know the right words. But for the first time in my life, I spoke honestly, raw, unfiltered, trembling. "Jesus, if that was you, help me. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm scared. I'm lost. But I want truth. I want you." The moment his name left my lips, peace washed over me like warm oil poured over a wound. My shoulders collapsed as if invisible chains had snapped off my body. I began to weep. Quiet, shaking sobs I tried to bury in my pillow. I confessed everything: my anger, my confusion, my shame, the fear that had ruled my entire life. And with every whispered confession, I felt something dark loosening its grip on me. When I finally whispered, "I believe you are real," a warmth filled my chest so intensely that I fell forward onto the floor. It felt like rebirth, like someone breathing life into a hollow body. When I stood up, I knew something fundamental had changed. I couldn't explain it, but I knew I wasn't the same Kareem anymore. The next days were a strange double life. By day, I prayed in the mosque, recited verses, and acted like the obedient Sheik's son. But by night, I devoured scripture on a hidden notebook, deleting every trace of the Bible app before sunrise. I felt alive for the first time, but also hunted. Rumors spread quickly. People whispered that I looked distracted, that something was wrong with me, and then one afternoon, my cousin pulled me aside and asked the question that made my stomach drop. "Kareem, why did someone say they saw a Christian app on your phone?" The moment my cousin asked that question, my entire body went cold. It felt like someone had reached inside my chest and squeezed my heart until it stopped beating. I tried to look confused, to force a laugh, to dismiss it as nonsense, but my voice stuck in my throat. He studied me with narrowed eyes, the kind that already knew the answer, but wanted to hear me confess it myself. "Kareem," he whispered, leaning closer, "you know what happens to people who follow the Christians?" The warning wasn't a threat, it was a reminder of honor, of shame, of consequences. I swallowed hard and told him it was a misunderstanding, that someone must have seen wrong. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his face, in the stiff way he nodded, in the way he walked off without another word. By sunset, the silence in my house felt dangerous. My father avoided looking at me. My mother hovered nearby as if trying to read my spirit. Even my younger siblings watched me like I was carrying something contagious. I knew something was coming. I felt it in my bones. That night, just after I lay down, I heard footsteps outside my door. Multiple sets, slow and heavy, like a verdict marching down the hallway. The door opened without knocking. My father entered first. Behind him were two uncles, the neighborhood imam, and three elders I had known since childhood. Their faces were tight, serious, stripped of any softness. My mother stood behind them, wringing her hands, eyes red from crying. "Sit up," my father ordered. His voice was unusually calm, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. They gathered around me in a circle, like judges preparing to deliver a sentence. The imam spoke first, asking gentle questions wrapped in words that felt like traps. "Your father says you've been distant, distracted, losing focus in prayer. Is there anything troubling your heart, son?" I shook my head. My palms were sweating so much my sheets were damp. My father watched every twitch of my face. Then one of my uncles leaned forward. "Someone claimed you were seen reading Christian texts. Is that true?" My throat tightened. I tried to answer, but no sound came out. The silence itself was an admission. My mother broke into tears, pleading for me to say something, anything, that would clear my name. The pressure in the room grew unbearable. Each man took a turn, one begging, one shaming, one threatening, one quoting scripture about apostasy. They spoke of hell, of honor, of curses on the household if a son strayed. My father finally stepped closer, towering over me. "Swear," he said quietly, "swear by Allah, in front of these witnesses, that you are loyal to Islam." His words hit me like a fist. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear anything else. I opened my mouth, but truth blocked every path to a lie. I simply couldn't speak. My silence lasted only seconds, but it was enough. My father's face changed, his calm shattered. Fury replaced it as he raised his voice and declared, "Then I will discipline this disobedience out of you." When my father shouted those words, something inside me fractured. The men in the room shifted, some looking away as if they already knew what was about to happen. My mother tried to step forward, but my uncle held her back, whispering that this was necessary, that I needed guidance. My father grabbed my arm with a force that made my bones ache. He dragged me from the bed and pushed me into the center of the room. My legs trembled so violently I thought they would collapse. "Do you know what you are doing to this family?" he yelled. "Do you know the shame you bring? People are already talking. They are saying my son is influenced by Christians. My son!" He spat the last words like they tasted bitter. I stood there silently, unable to speak, unable to breathe. His rage exploded. He struck me across the face, the kind of slap meant to reset a person's soul. My ears rang, my vision blurred. My uncles looked away, pretending they didn't see. The imam sighed deeply, like he was disappointed that I forced this. My father shouted verses, warnings, curses, his voice shaking with fury and fear. "You will not dishonor me. You will not betray Allah. I will correct you even if it breaks you." Another strike. My mother sobbed uncontrollably now, begging them to stop, begging me to repent, begging God to have mercy on our home. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, to tell them I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, but every time I opened my mouth, only a trembling breath came out. Then something happened, something I still struggle to explain. As my father raised his hand again, a calmness spread through me, warm and steady like a shield wrapping around my spirit. In that moment, I knew I was not alone. This wasn't courage, it wasn't stubbornness, it was presence. Jesus was with me. I lifted my head and whispered, barely audible, "I cannot deny him." The room froze. My father stared at me like he was seeing a stranger wearing his son's face. "Get out," he said, voice trembling with a mixture of humiliation and rage. "If you want the Christians so much, go to them. You are no son of mine." My mother cried out, reaching for me, but he pulled her back. "Let him go," he ordered. "Let him face the consequences of his betrayal." My legs moved on their own as I stepped toward the door. No one stopped me, no one spoke. The silence was somehow louder than the shouting had been. I left with nothing. No bag, no money, no plan. Just the clothes I wore and the phone in my pocket. When the door slammed behind me, the sound echoed through my chest like a final judgment. I walked into the night, trembling, heartbroken, terrified, but strangely steady. I lifted my eyes to the sky and whispered, "Lord, where do I go now?" The night swallowed me as I walked, each step heavier than the last. The air felt colder than usual, or maybe it was just the shock settling into my bones. I kept replaying my father's words, "You are no son of mine." They echoed like they had been carved into my skull. Every streetlight buzzed faintly above me, casting long shadows that made me feel small, exposed, unwanted. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who would even dare to open their door for someone like me. My body shook with a mixture of fear and humiliation, but under it all was a strange peace, thin and fragile, but unmistakably real. I walked for almost an hour before my phone buzzed, a message from Daniel, an online Christian friend I had spoken to only a handful of times. He had no idea what had happened. His simple message read, "Are you okay? I feel like God wants me to check on you." I stopped walking. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred with tears. I called him, barely able to breathe as I explained everything in broken sentences. He didn't hesitate for 1 second. "Come to me," he said. "I'll send you the location. You're safe, brother." Brother. No one had ever called me that with such warmth. When I arrived at his small apartment, he opened the door before I even knocked. His face softened when he saw the bruises forming along my cheek. He didn't pity me. He simply welcomed me inside with the kind of kindness I had never experienced from a stranger. "You're not alone," he said as he handed me water. "Jesus is with you. And so are we." That night, I slept on his couch. I cried quietly into the cushions, trying not to let him hear. I cried because of the loss, because of the pain, because of the uncertainty. But I also cried because, for the first time, I felt held. In the following days, Daniel introduced me to a small home church made mostly of ex-Muslims and quiet seekers. The first time I stepped inside, I froze at the doorway. Something warm swept over me, like a gentle embrace without arms. People smiled, real smiles, not the guarded ones I was used to. They didn't look at me like a threat or a disappointment. They saw me. They called me by name. When worship began, I didn't know the songs, but tears streamed down my face anyway. It felt like my soul recognized the words, even if my mind didn't. During one gathering, I shared my story for the first time. My voice cracked, my hands trembled, and I could barely look anyone in the eye. But the room didn't judge me. They cried with me. They prayed for me. They wrapped me in a circle of warmth I didn't know humans could offer. Old wounds surfaced, memories of being beaten for mistakes, punished for questions, silenced for emotions. But slowly, gently, Jesus began stitching my broken places back together. Just when I thought I might finally be healing, my phone buzzed again. A new message. It was from my father. "Come home. I want to speak with you. Alone?" My heart dropped. The final meeting was waiting for me. When I received my father's message, my hands went numb. I stared at the screen so long the brightness blurred into a white haze. A part of me hoped the message was fake, some kind of trick or misunderstanding, but I knew my father's tone: short, sharp, final. Daniel looked at me with concern when I told him. "You don't have to go," he said softly. But something deep inside me whispered that I needed to face this, not to win, not to prove anything, but to close a door that had been left cracked open my entire life. The next morning, I walked back to the house I once called home. Every step felt like walking through memories, childhood laughter, scoldings, prayers, expectations, all tangled together like threads I could no longer separate. When I reached the gate, I hesitated. The house looked the same, but I wasn't the same. I knocked gently. My mother didn't open the door, nor my siblings. It was my father. His face was tighter, older, as if the past few days had carved new lines across his skin. He stepped aside and motioned me in without a word. The house felt smaller than I remembered, or maybe it was just heavier. He led me to the sitting room. No uncles, no imam, no audience. Just him, just us. He didn't sit. He stood across from me with his arms crossed, studying me like a problem he couldn't solve. "Kareem," he began, voice low, "I raised you to honor this family, to follow the truth, to lead." I swallowed hard. "I know." "Then why?" he asked, and this time the question didn't come with anger. It came with something like bewilderment. Why throw everything away? For what? A dream? A foreign god? My breath wavered. "Because he found me, Baba. Because I felt a love I never felt in Islam. Because Jesus is real." His jaw tightened. He turned his face slightly, blinking rapidly as if trying to hold himself together. "Do you know what they're saying about me? About us? That I failed? That my own son has rejected Allah? Do you know what that means?" I stepped closer, cautiously. "I didn't reject you. I just found the truth." "Truth?" he snapped. "Your truth is destroying this family." His voice cracked on the word family, and for the first time I saw something other than fury in his eyes. I saw fear, deep, desperate fear. For a moment, silence stood between us like a fragile bridge. I took a slow breath. "Baba, I love you, I always will, but I cannot renounce Jesus, even if it costs me everything." He looked at me as if truly seeing me for the first time, not the son he dreamed of, not the religious successor, but the man I had become. His shoulders slumped slightly. "Then go," he whispered. "I cannot stop you." "But you are choosing a path without this family." My throat tightened, but a calm filled me. "I know, but I'm not walking alone." I stepped back toward the door. As I opened it, sunlight spilled across my face. Pain and peace mixed inside me, but the peace was stronger. I whispered, "If Christ saved me, he can reach anyone." Then I walked forward into the life God was calling me to live.